So since I am going on vacation, I believe technically today is the day I'm uploading this. It's being pre-recorded. And we have a VR update in progress, but I don't know when we're going to be finished with it. It should be in the coming days, but since I'm unable to confirm that it's going to be before I leave, I wanted to do a little VR update video of my own. This is just going to be me giving my opinion on the metagame, basically. I guess I could also make this say DLC 2 here, but it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to give my opinion on what the updated VR should look like. I just copy-pasted the current one we had into the sandbox. I'm going to add the new Pokemon now. And then we're going to adjust any placements of old Pokemon. We should get a pretty nice looking VR, I think. Of course, y'all better join this content. Make sure that you do subscribe if you're already not subscribed. I'm on my way to 10K by the end of the year. Very, very close to 7K right now. If every one of you watching right now that's not yet subscribed, if you just go down and click that right now, we'll be there. 10K very, very quickly. 3K is away, but you know, we'll get there. We'll get there. Anyhow, I'm gonna start off with the new Pokemon because I think talking about these is always a little bit more interesting. And Basculegion, this is one of the most meta Pokemon we've got right now. And I would probably say Basculegion. I think I actually only voted it. I'm gonna have to update my votes after doing this video. I would say Basculegion is an A rank mon, and I know some people are gonna say this is a little high of a ranking for it, but my rationale is that Legion as a Scarfer has been just incredible so far. It's kind of like the same reason you look at Inteleon and you go, oh yeah, this mon is a great wall breaker. Because the water resists in this tier, they're not a plenty. We really don't have a lot. And of course the difference between those two would be that Basculegion has an even better move to pivot with, which kind of helps. You just do a little bit more chip with Flip Turn than you do in Inteleon U-Turn. So when a mon like, say, Water Poros or Serena or Quillfish comes in, yeah, I mean, you're still doing a ton to them. But it's a little bit more meaningful chip, at least, which is kind of cool. And of course, they're coming in on wave crashes that are always taking a million from it. I just really value what this adds to the tier as a Scarfer, as an offensive Inteleon check as well. Really as an offensive check to much of the tier. I mean, you even can look at some of these other mons up here, like Calm Mind Meloetta. Nice check. Nasty Plot Thunders. Nice check. Something like DD Flygon? I might live one hit. Probably not, but you get the idea. I think, I will say as I put this in A, I'm already tempted to drop it, and I think I will. I'm going to put more in A-, because I think it works a little bit better there. Like, I just look at these mons in comparison, it's a little bit better here. Because I do think there are some noted drawbacks. One, Vileplume is still, like, really, really common. And you don't have a great way around it. Psychic Fangs isn't the best move, and you risk effects for every turn. Quillfish, like I mentioned, I'm personally just higher on Quillfish than most users. I think it's really, really consistent. Glowbro is like all but always Terra Water now as well, very commonly Helmet. I do think these are pretty noted drawbacks to the Legion, but I do really like what it does for the tier offensively. I think it's going to be one of the best mons in the format for a while. Hisui Decidueye, this mon has not really started doing too much, and so as a result, it's getting put into Purgatory, which is B rank. I mean, really the thing with Decidueye Hisui is just Serena competition is so great if you're talking about utility. And because teams often want spikes as well, just because, I mean, we have a lot of good spikers, but also spikes are just, I mean, any meta where hazard control isn't viewed as particularly good, spikes end up being viewed as a little bit better. Which is funny, because boots end up being viewed as a little bit better, which you'd say would hurt spikes' viability, but I digress. I think Serena just being better is always going to be a tough mountain to climb. Even though this thing has some incredible moves. Like, the standard set is 4 broken moves, bro. Triple Arrows, Knockoff, Defog, Roost. That is just 4 great moves, man. And you can't get past the bar of Serena. You really just can't. So, I don't know. I think Sword Stance sets on terrain could be worth trying, like Grassy Terrain specifically. Because it does get the Glizzy Glide. So, hey. Maybe there's that, but until then, I'm gonna just rate it low. It does not help that Glowbro is in the format. Or Flamigo. Or Thunders. There's a lot of mods that exist that are very common and give it hell. Electivire. This is not viable, so I will just take it off. That's really all I have to say. Electivire, that is not a viable Pokemon. Almost every drop is viable. It's not one of them. Eggy Alola. I do think this mon's pretty decent. Though I'd probably still rate it more like down in B-. Because, end of the day, we've got Gudra, we've got Dragalge. I think both of them are pretty clearly better than Exeggutor Alola. I think the Custap set is really good on this spawn, but I don't feel like it's enough to like carry it from being down here. And it doesn't help too, again, priority moves are very, very common. And Custap just adds like 1 to the priority bracket, if I'm remembering correctly, or it makes you move first within that priority bracket. So if I'm facing just like a Pawmot, and I endured on the Ice Punch, and then they mock me the next turn, it doesn't really matter if I've got a Custap. They just get to go first. Same with like a Lucario E-speeding. They're just still faster. So that kind of hurts. And then I'm not too convinced by special sets right now. I think those are a little slow to be particularly good. And then SD sets I do like, but at times can feel a little bit weak. Also, your coverage is kind of awkward, so you end up getting checked by ground types, which I don't really think is something I should have to say. But also, like, the inevitable Vileplume is still going to give you issues. Something like Paldean Tauros can be annoying because of Intimidate, so it's going to switch in. And then if you're at your Custap range, I mean, it doesn't even have to CC and give you defense drops to work with. And there's a little bit of unreliability to the set as well. Because Custap is, you know, even with Harvest, giving you extra turns to activate it. Or not, Harvest, Endure. Harvest is still not guaranteed to activate, which kind of sucks. And next is Gallade. I like Gallade, but I don't think it's, like, amazing. I'd probably put it down in A-. Well, probably more like B+. Because I think Gallade, the way I view a VR is, like, B+ is right when that thing transitions from anything in A- and above I view as, like, meta. B+ is, like, kind of meta, but you're starting to test my patience, and B is like the true, like, this is the wall to the club. This is like this separates what I would consider to be kind of meta versus, yeah, you know, you're starting to look into these mons with a bit of a side eye. So I put Gallade about there. We haven't really seen much success with it, so a lot of this is just my on paper feelings about Gallade, so I do want to be forefront with you on that. I think on Psychic Terrain, it should be pretty good. I mean, that's why it rose in the first place. I used it a little bit with Psychic Terrain, and it validated my thoughts. I think fighting type checks as well, being kind of vulnerable to Gallade naturally, is pretty helpful. Psycho Cut does mad work. I mean, you look at a lot of the checks to fighters in this tier. Glowbro is annoying because you can break it, but it's still an annoying trade you have to take. And then you look down through here, you've got, like, Dragalge, if you want to consider that a fighting check. I mean, you pop that, you pop Vileplume. I don't even know, does this count as a check? But you pop Florges. You can beat Gligar down, but it's still kind of a tough trade. And a lot of the time, Gligar will just EQ you for a ton, and then you'll get revenge killed by something faster the next turn anyway. So it's not even really that great of a trade to take. But I still like Gallade. I think agility sets are pretty cool as well. Help negate a lot of your offensive counterplay. Yeah. Golurk. I like this. Maybe I'm too high on Golurk, but I'm going to put it in like B+. I think having another ground type in the tier is always pretty cool. And I think teams aren't really prepared still for Poltergeist spamming users. That's really it. I mean, look at the physical walls in this tier, right? You look at Glowbro, which gets annihilated. Like, it's really nice to have Golurk, because it's kind of a defensive check as well. Obviously, again, these mons have all pivoted to running Surf now, unfortunately. But you're still a check, because you switch on 3 other moves very, very easily. You know what, like, Diancie, I guess you could consider as a physical wall. I mean, that mon gets tabled. Reggie still gets tabled. Vileplume, Earthquake does a million too. Avalugg, okay, there's a wall there, but can't win them all. Gligar gets punched in the face by Ice Punch. So things like Sylveon and Florges, I mean, these don't count. So, that's kind of where we go with it. Grimmsnarl, this one is actually kind of just doo-doo. I mean, I'm gonna say this is kind of a hot take. I don't think Grimm's particularly good. I don't know what it's supposed to do in this meta, because the bulk up sets don't seem nearly as good. I don't think I want to underrate it this hard. I'm just gonna put it in B, though. Because the thing is, the bulk up sets feel like they're a lot worse. In part because there's just other bulky setup options. they're better. And so, again, especially Scrafty, for example, right? How do I justify using a Grimmsnarl in the tier with Scrafty? How do I justify using Grimmsnarl in the tier with Diancie? I mean, Diancie even works doubly against Grimmsnarl too, because not only is it competition for it as one of those fat setup mons, but it helps check a lot of the bullshit Grim wants to do as well with Diamond Storm body press boosting. And even just blocking Parting Shot if you want to talk about those old Parting Shot pivot sets that Grim would run. Helps versus that a lot. And we also have actual fairies in the tier now. We have Vileplume back, which was always a good Grimmsnarl answer. Even with Terastallizing to help Grim out, so it could turn into a Steel type and you can't Sludge Bomb it anymore. You still have Vileplume able to spam out Strength Saps, throw off a Leech Seed versus it, stuff like that. You also like Registeel, which runs Iron Defense Body Press quite a lot. That helps contain Grimmsnarl. There's just a lot more going on now. I mean, hell, I think Water Poros, if I'm like Terra Steel, I almost wonder, could I like trade with Grim as it bulks up if I'm like Choice Band with a Wave Crash? Maybe. Yeah, those are just my raw thoughts. Hitmonlee! Y'all know I don't love Hitmonlee very much. I would actually say, though, Hitmonlee's kind of taken Sceptile's spot on terrain in a way. I'd probably say it's A-. I think it's entirely a proponent of the meta, but it does work very well on these terrain teams. That's kind of unavoidable, or unignorable. I still don't love it. I think it's kind of inconsistent as a sweeper on them, and it doesn't really even break all that well. It just feels like it has such a solid place on the builds that I can't really rate. You know what I can do? I could say Hitmonlee instead of A-. I put it where Grafaiai is, because I wouldn't move Grafaiai up, I don't think, right? I'd probably keep that B+ still. I think Hitmonlee maybe goes alongside it. Yeah, I think I like that. Again, y'all have seen me try to use Hitmonlee. That mon does not look good. But it still feels like it's very relevant in the meta. Indeedee male, meanwhile, will be going in A-. Because, again, it is now the better Psychic Terrain enabler than Indeedee female. But it's also just a better standalone mon. Expanding Force means you can run it as, like, just a standard wall breaker. You can also do, like, little Psychic Terrain cores. Whereas with female Indeedee, oftentimes it felt like you were doing a full Psychic Terrain team. Not that you had to. I just think this tandem of, like, Indeedee plus, say, Hitmonlee could work better on, like, even just an HO build. Keep in mind, too, male Indeedee has Healing Wish this generation now. It didn't last gen, but it got it as a move pool buff. So female Indeedee doesn't have that as a niche over it either. So I think it works a lot better as a standalone mon in, like, every single regard. Maybe I think female Indeedee's niche at this point would be, like, maybe on a full Psychic Terrain team, you still value it a little bit more because it has the dual screens. I think that's something. It's a little bulkier as well, so it's a better pure utility mon, but generally speaking, male is just completely better. Inteleon. Now, based on what I talk about Inteleon, you may think I think this mon's like the worst thing in the tier. No, very clearly A+ mon. Incredibly dominant wall breaker. Defensively, counterplay can feel kind of shaky at times. You do have to rely a lot on just these generally specially defensive mons, which is kind of scary. But you do have some resistances that can at least offset it. I mean, you got like Dragalge, for example. You got Serena, which runs Synthesis a fair amount of the time. And then again, you talk about like the blanket checks. You got like Sylveon, which can Terra Water. Florges can Terra Water. Raj can Terra Dragon. Like, there's options out here. Inteleon, though, definitely one of the best breakers. Helps as well that it gives balanced teams that nice 1-2 punch combo of a mon that's not only like incredibly naturally fast, but it's also very powerful. And yeah, as a balance user, I mean, that's just something that I always inherently value a ton on my builds. If I can get a lot out of one mon like that, then I'm going to often want that. Lucario. Lucario's weird. I think I'd probably put an A, though. I think its offensive power is, like, pretty clear. Just a little bit awkward to get going at times, because finding the opportunities to set up with SD, it's not like I'm running Dragonite or Arceus, you know, E-Killer, right? Those mons have bulk. Or Dragonite's case even has multi-skill. They've got recovery as well. Lucario, man, it's got offensive power and a dream. And I feel like a lot of the time your setup opportunities are garnered by Lucario being so strong and forcing a lot of Pokemon out. The issue is, in a generation with terastallizing, that's sometimes still a little hard to do. Like, I'm out versus a Registeel, right? I don't necessarily force it to switch. Maybe they just Terra Poison in my face and Body Press me and I'd die. So it can get a little bit tough, but I still think that its ability to check all of offense just through how strong its E-Speed is, and I mean, definitely beat up on all of offense with SD Terra normal E-Speed, is very, very highly valuable. Pawmot, meanwhile, I'm putting this in A+, which is definitely a bit of a deviation from where I was currently putting it, like A. I think Pawmot's an incredible breaker. The offensive power is really hard for the tier to match up to. The speed isn't nearly as good as Inteleon, but as a trade-off, hey, you've got priority. And I mean, I wouldn't even say Pawmot's harder to naturally stop with just blanket physical walls because of the coverage. Like, Inteleon, I think when you talk about it versus blanket special walls, you end up having to burn Terra a lot more frequently to get the, like, stupid silly calcs. Pawmot, you can kind of say the same for it, because if you want to spam Double Shock, you have to turn into an electric type. But in terms of just your raw damage output, it's typically enough versus most of these mons to put them down anyway. So like Diancie, for example, don't switch into me. I could Double Shock into CC it, and it's probably dead if I have, like, rocks up. Something like Inteleon, I mean, a Sylveon switches in, I Hydro Pump them for, like, 50-ish. If I Terra Water, I still have to play around the fact that they're going to protect, and they might just Terra Water versus me in response. I feel like it gets a little more dicey. Pawmot, maybe, and I think it helps too. Pawmot's got Dual Stab, so we talked about the Lucario, you know, Registeel terastallizing. Well, if I CC a Registeel, or if I see a Registeel switch into me on the following turn, and I think they're going to Terra Poison or something, I at least have Double Shock that I can go for. Like, I have that other Stab attack to fall back on. Lucario, I mean, you could say the same, of course, for it, but Meteor Mash is kind of like, for coverage. And in Inu, it's pretty typical. You see it run no Meteor Mash. You just go Crunch instead, because you want coverage for Chandelure. So, yeah. Rampardos, no. And I'm gonna say it, too. Whimsicott's just not viable this gen. Spec sets are way too weak, and I don't think anyone really views sets like Leech Seed, Subseed stuff is very good at all. Anything can become a dark type if they want, bro. I don't care about your Moonblast. It's doing 5%. Get out. Scrafty. I think I'd actually throw Scrafty up here as well. Scrafty is a very, very potent sweeper, man. Yes, it's got competition with Glowbro and Diancie. There's new mons that help limited. I know that. Scrafty still is the best user of Terra in the tier, I'd say right now. Or at least one of them. A lot of that, too, just being that Scrafty with the Flurry weakness. I feel like it's so easy to Terra with this one. And you look at the types you Terra into, they just work really well. Scrafty's a bulk up sweeper, so I turned into a poison type, and now I take less damage from Earthquake. Same I did with steel types. Or same I did with terastallizing. God, I can't speak. Into a steel type. I mean, it just works so naturally well. Oh, your Brave Bird threatens me? Let me turn into a poison type and bulk up. Now you do less. See? And again, the setup sets are just so potent. Dragon Dance in particular is a pretty slept on set. I think you definitely need to use Dragon Dance Scrafty if you're not already using it. It's just... You talk about consistency, it's weirdly consistent. And now, I'm going to get rid of that new category, because look at that. We got all the new mons added. So now we go to adjusting ranks, and I'm going to go through Pokemon here. And I'm not going to talk a ton about mons that I'm not moving. Like Flygon and Glowbro, I mean, they're still like just as good as they were before, so they're good to stay in S. I also think this will just remain my S rank, because I really don't think anything else defines the metagame like these two. Diancie and A+, I'm actually like more okay about nowadays than I used to be. I think the dual setup sets, or not even the dual setup, I just think like setup sets in general are very good, and it has access to a lot of different ones. And I think having Encore on Diancie to disrupt the litany of random setup, I do think that's pretty beneficial. Flamigo, meanwhile, I'm actually going to drop it. Not as far as I would have otherwise. Since Oricorio Pom-Pom got banned, I do think Flamigo will rebound a bit, but I think I'd still move it down to A. Not the biggest fan of it right now. Partly because there's more competition still, but also Thunderous is like super, super freaky scary. And Thunderous, of course, is similar to Oricorio, where you can use a Flamigo locked into a move as setup. Or it's a turn to force it out, but still. And honestly, I'm fine with the rest of A+. Actually, Umbreon. Umbreon I am going to drop. Now, Umbreon still has that syndrome of, I feel unkillable sometimes. But in this meta, I really don't like Umbreon, so I'm going to rate it down here where I use... Like, I think Umbreon is genuinely like, more down in A-, where I think it's I think it's farting. Yeah, thank God. Let's go. I can't speak, dude. It is 7 a.m. and I am still waking up. That's crazy. It's finally starting, though, to fall off a bit. I think some of that's just the meta. It's balance. The slow builds that Umbreon really likes, right? Those are not super common. And, I mean, look, we even got more mods that beat up on Umbreon, man. Something like Inteleon's just generally good at pressuring it. Scrafty just completely sits on Umbreon. Palma, well, hey, man, I force it to Terra. So that's good. Lucario, though, even... I'm not going to say Lucario sits on it because boosted foul play. If you sword stance at a foul play, I'm doing a lot to you. But it is another deterrent. I still think Umbreon's generally kind of falling off, though, now. And I do like these guys up here, though. I think this is a good A+. Then we go down to A... And if I'm thinking of anything to drop, there's definitely mons here to drop, right? Chandelure is fine here. I actually think I would drop Raj to A-. There's an argument to be had that you could instead keep Copper A and then rise Registeel to A+. But I think Registeel is pretty clearly the best steel right now, and even still, I don't love those builds. I think they're still good. Registeel just, I feel like you still end up getting Registeel on some of these quasi-offensive builds, where it's like, you're kind of still balanced, but you do lean a little more offensive. A lot of it's just because, like, yes, Registeel is passive, but Registeel is so bulky on both ends of it that you get so much mileage out of it on your team, which I think that's pretty good. And then Lazzle I'd actually drop too, and I'm going to give this a pretty big drop. I think Salazzle is, like, vanished from the meta entirely, just about. Let's see, right there. I don't think, like, I think Lazzle's more like a B+ mon now, because there's already a ton of competition from fire types right now. I mean, again, we look up here. I mean, there's Chandelure, Arcanine, Delphox, Imbor. There's even Oricorio if you want to throw that in there. And Lazzle doesn't really stand out anymore, I don't feel. The speed tier is even more contested now with Inteleon getting unbanned. I just don't think it's that good. A-. I was originally going to drop Avalugg. I think I'm actually okay with it staying here now. Brute Bonnet, on the other hand, this one can, like, fall down to B-. With no Spore, it is genuinely kind of ass. I feel like it does just end up being relegated to offense now. Whether it's Sun, whether it's, like, just generic offense where you utilize it having, like, really good bulk and priority to still have a pretty decent niche. Just offer, again, you offer a lot to offense through that type of combo of utility. I don't really see why I'd use it anywhere else. Maybe it might be more like a B rank mon. I might change that later, but I think for now I'd put Bonnet down here. It really does feel kind of doo-doo. Delphox, I'm gonna keep Fox A-, but I will acknowledge that the usage of this is not really where it should be. It is a little low usage, so I do recognize that. Okay, next mons. I think Espeon here is still fine. Florges here is fine. Gligar here, I'm going to say is fine. I could actually see a little bit of a rise for Florg. I mean, I think Florg's better than Espeon just because Calm Mind Synthesis, but it is what it is. Not Espeon, Sylveon, I mean. Keys, I still really like, so I'm keeping them here. Sceptile, I am going to drop. It was, like, the de facto best of the setup mons at first. Like, it was just the best of the SD Unburden guys. Now I don't think it's as clear. I think just... It's hard to say. I think some of it is... Yeah, those bulky SD sets do offer quite a lot to Sceptile itself, but they don't offer as much to the team. Like, part of the reason I like Grafaiai over it, even though I think Sceptile's harder to stop, is it's just nice to have the ghost immunity. And Grafaiai is still similarly capable of running down teams, but having the ghost immunity is often just very, very helpful so that you get a couple more setup chances. You still talk about, like, you know, I mean, how many ghost types do we actually have in the tier? Not a ton, but I think when you run into those matchups, it is nice to not get immediately just destroyed in them. So, that's where I'm kind of at with it. Snorlax, this mod is not meta at all, and I'm genuinely throwing it into C. Some people might think this is way too low for Snorlax, and that's fair. This mod sucks, though. It doesn't get any usage. It's not any better than any other, like, the Dunsparce is better. The Dunsparce is a better mon. Because at least the Dunsparce is Roost. Like, I don't have to go to sleep for 2 turns just to get my damn health back. I don't know what Lax's supposed to do. Tell me. The only reason it's staying C2 is because, I mean, one, let's not pretend like Curse Lax is still at least kind of scary. But also, like, it checks Chandelure. But what else am I doing with this one? The meta is dominated by offense and hazards. These are 2 things Snorlax hates. So yeah, easy drop. Sylveon, I'm going to keep it here. And a Toxtricity will rise. There's a little bit of a biased pick, but I think Toxtricity is quite nice right now. I think it's fine in A. Bite me. I'm going to save now just so we can see a little bit of progress. Look at this. Look at this. Isn't this so wonderful? Look at how our ranks are coming out. I think these top ranks are looking pretty decent. Definitely could see myself dropping some stuff out of A- still, but it is what it is. Let me get a B+. Altaria is fine to stay here. Duraludon, I am going to say, actually should rise. I think Iron Press Duraludon is kind of just still really annoying. I also like it on offense teams because Duraludon gives you quite a lot. I like having the self-KO move with Steel Beam. I like having a Jetpack Draco Meteor. I like having T-Wave occasionally if I want to run that on it. Pretty just malleable to those types of builds. I've had a lot of success with it, so, you know, getting biased. Emboar, I do think Emboar is probably better than B+, but I am going to keep it here. I do think that Emboar is fine to stay B+. You gotta realize what we're comparing Emboar to up here. It's faster, and I'm not gonna say stronger, but faster fighting types, they're still, like, insanely strong. Some of these even giving you, like, at least the illusion of defensive utility. Like Water Poros. Palma, you know, I got a Volt Absorb Palma. Look at me go. I'm immune to water. Look at me. Emboar doesn't really do anything other than break. And I mean, it's really good at that, but I kind of feel like, you know, it's a Golurk type mon, right? So it'll stay here. Goodra, I'm actually going to drop out of B+ down to B. I really don't think Goodra is all that good anymore. I've talked about this before. And a lot of it is just, when you compare it to Dragalge, we banned Goodra first last gen, right? Before Dragalge. But this gen, I just think that Dragalge having Flip Turn and how the metas have ended up looking has been a huge change for it. Even though Goodra's got Knockoff and Toxic as buffs, I think Dragalge just, it's, you know, it literally didn't get buffed at all. At least I don't think it did. And it's just ends up being better because it fits into the tier more adequately. Like, what Dragalge does is more conducive to success in this metagame. Because you see less momentum, and you operate at a little bit of a faster pace than what Goodra does, where it's trying to take a, you know, take its time with teams, with knocking Pokemon, spreading poisons. I don't really feel like that's as good. So yeah. There we go. Grafaiai is happy here, him only here. Mudsdale will rise. I don't love how many mons I'm adding into A-, but it kind of just is what it is. At least we get a couple. At least we get a little more variation here with the letters. I think we can appreciate that. But Mudsdale, I'm rising up. Especially Defensive Horse might not be as good with Pom Pom gone, but I think it'll still be valuable to help check Sensu and even potentially Orkor Bailey. Though we're also just seeing more teams try out Horse. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, man, it's Mudsdale. Like, surely it can't be that bad. I think having Roar is cool. I think having some certain bulky setup options is cool. Body Press works well. You got, like, Heavy Slam, Stone Edge. All these moves just give you certain better matchups.
it's not a mon that I think is B+. I do think it's a little bit more in meta than that. Look at this past week of NUCL. Literally look at the semifinals week, man. Mudsdale usage was pretty high. I think a lot of it too is just the stats. It does help to have a mon. Like, you compare it to Gligar, which I do think is still in a vacuum a bit better, but Mudsdale's far less passive, and that's kind of huge. If you're going to be running not offense in this tier, I think Horse is a little bit nicer because it just does more. When you're getting turns to attack with Mudsdale, you're often doing a lot more damage than Gligar. Which, yeah, I mean, that's a very simple way of looking at it, but I have felt that a lot of this meta is just about, you know, hit shit. Then just do that. Just do damage, man. So, there's that. Palisand's fine here. Quill is still fine here. Screamtail, yeah, get out of my freaking tier, you bozo. Putting B-. Mon is not good. Doo-doo. I'm tired of this mon. Fake. Fake mon. Fake mon. I don't like anything this mon does. We have tried to use it. I don't need to explain myself. You all know why I'm dropping it. And Zoroark, I think I might actually drop to B. I mean, the fact is, it just really doesn't get usage. It's kind of just... Again, the mind games don't work. Now we get to B. Bruxish, I'm actually going to drop a bit more as well. I think I think it's like pretty clearly C tier now. The niche it has is, again, flip turn, but you run a water type as a Scarfer. It is... I want Water Poros, but I want to be able to pivot. And oddly enough, I mean, it doesn't help too. Floatzel is actually very good at that niche. Yes, you don't run Scarf, but Banded Floatzel, if you go Jolly, you're still hitting 361 speed. That's really good. And it turns out, yeah, that's generally the better option. So, Bruxish kind of fallen off. Even with Inteleon in the tier, by the way, I'm still going to keep Floatzel here. I think it's just genuinely quite good. Glassty, I'm actually going to rise up into a B+. We've seen a lot of success on it with hyper offense builds lately. Also, my mic was like coming out there, so I don't know how much of that was coming through. I think it all was, but just to reaffirm, Glastrier has been moving up to B+ now because of recent tournament success on HL. I hate tearing my mic out of there, bud. I still saw it at OVS working, so I think we're good, but yeah. Custap sets, man. And we talked about it a little bit earlier with talking about Grafaiai on the Terrain HO and why it's like, yeah, it's not a ton of defensive utility, but it's still a little bit, and I value that. Kind of the same as Glassed on HO, where it's not a ton of defensive utility, particularly because this is an ice type. This mon is not known for giving defensive utility, but it is quite bulky, and as a result, you're very, very adept at forcing trades, which works out pretty well. Like, Glassed is able to 1v1 just about anything in the tier, and with Custap sets getting so much more usage now, you can often randomly just force another KO as well. Grimm's here. Indity F, I'm actually going to take off the VR entirely. We have male Indity now, which I think takes away basically all the usage of female. We talked about maybe, like, there's some very, very fringe use cases. I don't think they're enough to keep Indity ranked, though. Ninetales, I'm actually going to rise. I'm going to rise that up to A-, because Sun is very meta. And I think Ninetales should be up here to represent that. That's really all there is to it. Sensu, I think we can raise Sensu up at least to B+, because it has been seeing a little bit of extra usage as is for a little bit now. Like, people are just using it more, even in Pom-Pom meta. But I don't want to jump the gun on it super hard yet, because I just think there's still some pretty clear things working against Oricorio Sensu. The worst defensive typing is always going to be the big one, and how it feels like with Sensu you have to terastalize a lot more just to not die, compared to Pom-Pom, where you were off to terastalizing just to kill something. Feels like it's the reverse. And so you get fewer, like, very nice setup opportunities. You also have to pass the AV Meloetta attacks, or you have to pay it a lot more frequently. And often, yeah, the IRS is catching you because you just can't pay it. The mon is very hard to break through. I think it helps that Umbreon is at least less common. I mean, that is definitely a tangible gain for Sensu, but I am yet to be convinced that it is enough. And then the rest of these mons, I mean, I feel like they're fine here. P2 I'd probably drop, though. I don't really feel like it's particularly meta. I feel like we had a little bit of a phase where we thought it was okay. And, I mean, it is okay, but it's just not particularly good, you know? Now we get to B-. And Abomasnow here. I'm actually going to raise Ambipom, though. Nice Ambipom. I mean, really, it's just that it's a nice anti-offense tool. And I think that Fake Out, U-Turn, Knockoff, Triple Axle set's pretty good at breaking. So, there you go. Good Metamon. Meanwhile, Articuno, Galar, and Braviary? I don't think these are worth using. Get them off my VR. I think, really, it's just the Steel types we have limit them so effectively. Like, those standard sets where you're trying to do stored power stuff, really, they don't work very well. And then otherwise, you're looking at... I mean, what's Articuno got going for it? Not much. And what does Hisui Braviary have? I mean, you can try Sheer Force stuff, but Mon is just so slow, man. Just use a better breaker. It really feels like those mons are the definition of just outclassed right now, to me. So that's why I'm keeping them kind of low. Zong, I'm gonna keep B-. I think it's okay there. Zard and both Typhlosion, I'm gonna move up. This kind of is just to reflect Sun. I think these mons are, you know, clearly two of the better Sun abusers, and as a result, we can move them up a little bit, alongside, you know, Ninetales getting the big rise. I just don't know how far up to rise the Sun mons overall outside of the setter, because a lot of the mons end up feeling replaceable in some way. But these two feel like they're the least replaceable, so at least get them a little higher. Ditto, I'm gonna move up a bit as well, put it up here because anti-offense. I think Ditto is just always kind of decent in these types of metas. Frostlass, I'm unranking. This is me personally. I don't like Frostlass. I think Lycanroc's better because boots are so common. Just throw up one hazard and work with that. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't like Frostlass taking 20 turns to set 3 spikes that eventually get spun away anyway. So there you go. Heracross, we're going to drop to C. I don't think Heracross is very good. A lot of it's just Heracross existing because, okay, I beat up slow teams. And that's it. Otherwise, it's like, use any of the other fighters. Jolteon is probably fine here. Lycan, I'm okay with here. If anything, I'd rise it, but we'll keep it here. Fire Oricorio, I'm going to just keep here. Rotom-Mow, I'm going to actually drop again to see. This mon is just not good. I don't know what it does, but it's not doing anything to convince me of a ranking for it, man. I'm sorry. Yeah, we look at the top of the meta as well. I mean, Flagon existing is always annoying because it's going to block your volts. Not the end of the world because Leaf Storm does so much, but it's at least a deterrent to Scarf Rotom. And then you just look at a lot of the other very, very common mons. Things like Serena, Trigalgy, Vileplume, all very, very common, all very, very good at limiting what Rotom-Mow wants to try to do. Otherwise, I feel like this is okay. Sandslash could drop, Rhydon could drop, but I'm going to keep them in B-. There's maybe something to these mons. And then C. C is going to be a rapid-fire unranking, so like, Alchemy, get out. Arboliva, I don't really think Arboliva's that worth it. I'm going to say to unrank. I think generally I'm just running wacky if I want terrain. Bastiodon, I actually think Iron Press Bastiodon is like fine. And honestly, given that I think it's fine, I'm going to keep Arboliva ranked. I don't think it's a very good mon, but I'll keep it here just for the sake of, if I'm ranking Bastiodon, I feel like ranking Arboliva's fine. Cole still's annoying. Regular Decid, I'm going to say is okay to keep here. Mostly because it's a pretty okay Water Tauros check, and it can defog. So there's that. Dodon, I'm actually going to rise a bit. I do think the Dunsparce is a little bit better than C rank would imply. If you're looking for a bulky normal type setup mon, it's probably what you're defaulting to at this point. Hisui Electrode, nope, too weak. Frostmoth, nope, too slow. Hariyama, it's probably okay. Houndstone, we're gonna rise the dog. Gonna rise the dog probably actually up to like B, I'm gonna be honest. Very, very good spin blocker. I think that's reason enough to have it in B. Not like it's the most effective mon in the meta, but I think putting it right on that fringe spot like we talked about, where this is like right on bordering between meta and not meta, I don't think a lot needs to go right for Houndstone to be able to step into the meta like full time. So there you go. Lantern, this mon is ass. Please stop trying to make this a thing. Lilligan, just way too replaceable. I'll keep it ranked, sure. Malamar, no. There's plenty of other bulky setup. Miss Magius, no. Don't want it. Alolan Sandslash, this can stay. Scyther, fuck off. I'm kidding. I'll keep Scyther ranked. Shiftry, it's probably fine. Tatsu is okay. I still don't think Blaze Tauros is worth using. I still don't think Toxcroak's worth using. Venomoth, just use a better Quiver Dancer. Victory Bell, I do actually think is like one of the better of the niche Sunmons, so I'm keeping it there. Virizion, no. And in Wo-Chien, Lamau. Please stop using this mon. I feel like RU has Wo-Chien ranked like 20 sub-ranks higher than we do, and I'm just still here like, there's no way that mon's actually any good in RU, right? Like, hold on, let me check real quick. Where is it? I want to see this. We're far into the video. Y'all like this content, right? Y'all like this type of content. Let's go see where Wo-Chien is on the RU VR. I'm very curious. Let's see. Wo-Chien. Alright. It's in B rank? Yeah, that's definitely too high. Y'all aren't fooling me. That mon's not a B rank mon. But this is our final little look at the VR that we made today. How do y'all feel about this? I think it looks pretty good. I generally like the placements of these mons. Like, some of the sub-rank... Like, obviously, A- looks like it's huge and an A is tiny. But it kind of just happens sometimes. I think, again, A and up, that's like the true cream of the crop of the meta. A- are the mons kind of trying to break into that, in my view. B+ are the mons that are like, okay, these are still, like, semi-meta, but... You're starting to, you know, you're testing my patience. B is literally on the door, and then B- and below is just the more niche options, which I feel like I could cull more if I wanted still, but honestly, it looks pretty okay for a, just size of a sub-rank on the VR. So, I hope y'all enjoyed this. As I said, we're gonna have an actual VR update out soon, but I wanted to do this just so again, I don't know if the VR update's gonna be done before I leave, and I wanted to get this out because, hey, if the VR update video itself will be postponed, get something that'll, you know, wet your taste buds a bit. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.